What's up, everybody? Fan number 328. Turkey, where's everybody from? Italy? It's late there. It sounds like I'm doing a lot of stuff here. I'm actually playing one note here. Nashville. Thoughts on the Beatles? I got my glasses on so I can actually see what you people write. So anytime that there's... boy, it goes by really fast there. Finland, Canada, London, Turkey, Detroit, Montana, Los Angeles, San Diego, Holland, Canada, Seattle, Argentina, Connecticut. Impressive. Keep going. Sweden, yeah, there we go. Connecticut, Ottawa, Salt Lake City, Iran, there we go. Ukraine, Dubai, Portugal, France, Utah, Holland, Brazil. This is like reciting the chord changes of a tune or something. India, Utah, Argentina, Holland, Romania, there we go. Las Vegas, China, Singapore, West Virginia, Brazil, Arizona, Belgium, Nigeria, Binghamton, New York. I know Binghamton very well. Belgium, France, Montreal, Cape Town, South Africa. Yeah. Holy smokes, that's unbelievable. Nigeria, Argentina, but does it gent? Oh, finally. It doesn't. This does gent, actually. Right here, listen. Just like one little genty note there. Anyways, that's a program called Rev. Anybody ever heard of Rev? Rev, R-E-V, yeah. It's a really cool program that somebody developed. I forget the company, but it's all backwards sounds. I need to turn this light on here. Can you turn that light on there? Do you mind? A little bit. It's all backwards sounds. It does things like... it has sounds like backwards piano. That's good. Actually, could you put the piano on it? Or the acoustic guitar? If you go to it and you hit acoustic guitar on it, you know? Right there. So here's the acoustic guitar, for example. Do harmonics and things. Output, that's right. So... it will do timed effects. It has things like distortion you can put on it. It's got delays. It has reverbs. It has everything, and you can really do some creative things. That's one of your film scoring toolkit things that somebody invented. That was it's actually brilliant. It saves you a lot of time when you're doing sound, any type of sound development like that, or anytime you want to put together these atmospheric sounds that actually have a rhythm to them, that helps a lot. So I would really suggest that program. Okay, so we're going to talk about Film Scoring Toolkit. I'd like to first welcome everybody, all the new subscribers. Got thousands of new subscribers. Got a couple videos that are getting up. I got one video, the darkest scale ever, that's almost up to 300,000 views, which is awesome. Can't even believe it because it's such a weird video. I thank you guys all for watching it and sharing it with people. But I'm waiting for my video to take off about the light and dark colors of minor, because that's one of my best videos I've ever done. And you guys need to watch it because it's really cool. So, do you the jazz? It's pretty funny. And then I did my Why Do People Hate Jazz video. That was my last live stream, which it's like the Apple video where people just it's a place for people to vent on how much they hate jazz. It's hilarious too. I saw some really funny comments, absurdly ridiculous comments, but there were some really interesting ones too. I'd love to I need to pull some of them out because I saw some actually fascinating comments by some very smart people. Let's see here. Anyway, so I will be answering questions. Also want to let you know that we're having a sale in my store today. For today only, I have the new Beato Mega PDF bundle, which has 16 PDFs and is 68 pages long. It's from lessons that were from right here. You'll recognize the titles. I have that bundled with the Beato book also that's on there for a huge discount for those of you that don't have the Beato book. Somebody just said, I found you. Is that Julietta? Is that what it is? I found you when you're at 70K and surprised my sub count was so low. Great to see you and Adam Ely getting bigger. Well, Adam, I'm getting bigger just because I'm eating way too much. Adam's still skinny. Even though we discovered a channel that Adam has about him, Adam Neely eating. That he's got 4 videos up and he's eating, I think cereal. He's eating a hamburger, something like that. It's pretty funny. Adam Neely eating. I also have a Rick Beato 2 channel that is, if you type in Rick Beato and then the number 2, you can find some of my videos that don't fit necessarily on this channel, but are really cool videos. I got a new one that I'm going to post later today with my son Dylan listening to this weird microtonal piece. And it's fascinating because he had never heard this. I brought him down and I just filmed his reaction listening to it. But he had a very, very different reaction than I thought he would have, and his opinion of it. And it's fascinating to watch. I think it is anyways. With his ear, to see what he would do with all these microtones when he's listening to a piece. Okay, so I want to get back to the film scoring toolkit. So these are basic things that you need to be able to do, either whether you're a beginner film scorer or an advanced film scorer. These are things that you need to master. The first thing to do is you got to figure out your DAW. Now, those of you that already are well beyond that and already know what you use, that's totally cool. But for film scoring, probably the most common one is Digital Performer, DP as people say. Then you have Logic is very common, Cubase, Pro Tools, and then things like Ableton Live are used for doing more dance-oriented stuff. If you're doing EDM music, it's actually great to be able to learn all these different programs because they all have different things in them that work really well if you can afford them. Before DAW, Gene says, don't you need talent? Well, apparently not, because of some of the things that I actually hear out there. Talent doesn't seem to be something that you need. I see Sibelius on there, music notation program. That comes down the list a little bit because I'll tell you why. You don't really need to know how to write music to be a film scorer. You actually don't. If you do, it's incredibly helpful. But typically, film scorers will hire orchestrators to do the orchestration for them. If they can do mock-ups, if you can do mock-ups on your keyboard with your DAW, somebody can take the MIDI notes and Sibelius or Finale or whatever will take the transcriptions and actually create the music from it. And an orchestrator is going to take your basic themes and orchestrate them for the orchestra. So let's say you have a mock-up of your piece or of your entire score, and it's all different types of things. You know, there could be orchestral pieces, there could be atmospheric pieces that use things like Omnisphere, which is a really great plugin that does incredibly cool pads and analog synth sounds. It's made by Spectrasonics, which is a really cool company. They also have a keyboard program called, what's the keyboard program called?
The Keyscapes.
Keyscapes, yes. They make excellent stuff. They have Stylus. Spectrasonics has Stylus, has a bass plugin called Trillion. They have Omnisphere, which is a pad program, and Keyscape. Those are all excellent programs that if you're going to spend the money, because part of being a film composer is to actually have an arsenal of sounds that you need to have. You need to have your orchestral sounds. You need to have your synthesized sounds. You need to have things to do programming. If you're doing any type of EDM type sounds, if you're doing any type of rhythmic sounds that you want to have, atmospheric things that go over it. So these are things. So these plugins will go with particular programs. For example, I use Pro Tools. I use Logic. They're on my computer over here, and I have plugins on it, like what I was just saying, the Spectrasonic sounds, or this thing Rev, or I've got all the East-West sample library that does orchestral samples. It does all these different drum programs, distorted drum things. I've got Spitfire Audio. I have their complete orchestral library. So these libraries will go. I've Contact. The libraries will go either on your computer hard drive, if you need to have an SSL hard drive in order to play the samples, or you can use a program to network computers using Ethernet with Vienna Ensemble Pro. That's a plugin essentially that where you can use multiple computers that will hold your sound libraries and will draw from them when you need them. That's probably one of the only ways you can do really complex scoring is to have that. So what people will typically have is they will have their main computer that they're running their DAW on, and they'll have multiple instruments, multiple computers that will be networked through this program that will make them all talk to each other, and you'll be able to load up your templates and have your entire orchestral. You'll have multiple kind of templates. You might have a template for you might have a string quartet template, or you might have a wind ensemble template, or you might have a full orchestra template, or a string orchestra template with percussion, whatever it's going to be. Or you'll have your templates for your more atmospheric sounds. That'll be, you'll open it up and it might have 20 plugins on it with all your reverb sends and everything like that. You also need to have some basic effects. Now, some of the things like Contact come with effects built into them. Some of the DAWs, or pretty much all DAWs, come with built-in effects. But there are really great effects to have that will improve your sound tremendously for stuff like film scoring. It will improve it for anything. If you're doing rock production, if you're doing EDM production, you need to have things like reverbs, you need to have delays, you need to have compression, EQs, okay? One great place to get all that stuff is Universal Audio, UAD. The plugins are expensive, and you need to either have a PCIe card in your computer or a satellite box, or you need to have the UAD rack mount converter that can do 16 tracks or 8 tracks. Or you can have a satellite or the one with the one knob, forget when that one's called. So any of those will give you the ability to use their effects. Now, they don't just have effects. They have things like guitar modelers, for example. Some of the great modeling sounds that they have on it, they have a lot of really good guitar modeling plugins. For example, they have one of the ones I like is made by Chandler. Now, Chandler typically makes pro audio preamps and compressors. One of my favorite being the Chandler TG1, which is a stereo compressor that's unbelievably good sounding. If you ever want to see how to sell a compressor, go to their YouTube page and watch their demo of the TG1 compressor. They have a really good drummer playing in a room that sounds incredibly average, and they just have the room mics up, and he's playing, and all of a sudden they engage that compressor, and it sounds massive. But it's $4,000. So, somebody just said we use Kempers instead of DAW VSTs. Okay, so that's another thing. Kemper or the Axe-Fx are two digital profiling platforms that are rack mountable. Kemper has a power amp that goes along with it, but they're rack mountable guitar preamps or guitar profiling amplifiers that you can use in place of a guitar amplifier. Now, many people don't have the luxury of having a bunch of guitar amps like I have back there and a studio that has an ISO booth where I can set up my cabinets and play a Marshall on 10. even if you have that, it's still handy to have something like a Kemper or an Axe-Fx to do sounds like that. When I was doing my video on Gent, and the guitarist Misha Mansour was commented on my video, and I went and watched one of his videos where he was talking about how he records guitar sounds, and he was doing them. I believe he was doing them with a profiler with an Axe-Fx, but he has his own amp out as well that's made by PV. And you know, I had this conversation with Sinister Gates that I put out on the video 2 days ago from Avenged Sevenfold, where we were talking about using an amp versus using the Axe-Fx or Kemper. And he's got the people, I believe he said, from Axe-Fx are coming out to him to profile his amp setup and A/B them for him. Because when you're using live with guitars, it's very difficult to carry an amp rig and blend it with effects. He uses the Axe-Fx for the effects, which are programmed through MIDI changes that will go along with the set, so the sounds will change themselves as the set is going on. It's all pre-programmed. Anyway, so this is that's another thing that is really handy to have. Now, not everybody is a guitar player that does film scoring, obviously, but the ability to record guitar, the ability to record acoustic instruments with a microphone, if you wanted vocals, or if you want to do things with acoustic instruments, you'll need a very basic setup for that as well. Mic preamp, a compressor, and an EQ, preferably stereo, at least 2 inputs, because a lot of times you want to record things in stereo. If you listen to many film scores, you'll hear acoustic instruments blended in with sampled instruments. For example, many film scores will reinforce the bass, the double bass in the orchestra with the synthesizer. They'll use the Spitfire sounds, or they'll use Vienna sounds, or whatever, to get those really low notes, especially when they go below E. E is the low note on a double bass unless you have an extension. If you watch any type of film score going down, you notice all the bass players will have extenders on their bass so they can play down to a low C or a low B. As you get down that low, those extenders lengthen the string and enable you have switches basically that you press that will change the length of the string and make it longer. So, but you can't really get the volume out of it because the string tension is, even though the string's longer, it doesn't quite have the same resonance as the bass has when it's tuned to E. I mean, if you think about it, these things were built to resonate at these particular frequencies, E being 41 hertz, okay? A low E and a bass. So, anyways, a lot of film scores will go in and reinforce that with a synthesizer. When I talked to, I did a sounding off with Mark Isham. And we talked about that. If you check out that sounding off, Mark is a famous film scorer. He's done over 100 films over since the 80s or so. He's actually a jazz trumpet player originally, and he said that same thing. And I actually I've talked to a lot of film scorers that do their own mock-ups, and they all say the same thing, that they will typically blend in synthesized sounds in order to make the low end really full. So it's important to have these things available. Not everybody can afford these really big sound libraries. The Spitfire Audio Library, to get their full library of their brass, strings, and woodwinds, is $1,700. That is not cheap. To buy the entire Vienna ensemble library is incredibly expensive. The orchestral libraries are incredibly expensive, so there's no way around it. If you want to get sounds that sound like real instruments or enough like real instruments, you got to save the money and do that. So anyways, somebody's saying, does the Axe effect sound too digital to me? That's interesting. Well, Sinister and I were talking about this, about the about whether they sound real or not. And I'm going to do a video on this actually, where I will play a profile that they have. I want to get either a Kemper or Axe effects, play the profile of an amp that I have, and then I'll actually record the amp, and then I'll actually record a profile of it so you can see what it sounds like. So you can actually hear the difference between the actual profiled sound. Let's say an EVH, for example. I have one right back there. So let's say I've got one of the original EVHs. So you play the sound, you listen to it, you play their version of it, and then you model it or whatever you call it, profile it, and then you listen to it, and you'll be able to hear the difference between them. His name is not Sinister Gates. His name is Brian. Who names their kids Sinister Gates? His name's Brian. And he's the greatest guy in the world. He's really, really a nice guy. Somebody said, do you need to be able to notate music to be a film composer? Is it possible to become a self-taught film composer? Absolutely. Hans Zimmer apparently is a self-taught film composer. Danny Elfman is a self-taught film composer. Mark Isham, who I interviewed, is a self-taught film composer. It's absolutely possible to become a self-taught film composer. I'm a self-taught film composer. Well, not really self-taught. Yeah, I am self-taught, even though I've never done a film. I've just analyzed film scoring. Anyways, in order to be self-taught, I mean, you can do things by ear. You don't need to be able to write the things down to be a film composer. Does it help to be able to read this? Yes. Do you know what this is? This is a Bach chorale. This is something that I would recommend everyone getting to start. Okay, 4-part chorales. Why? Because if you can learn to read these, you can learn to read anything. And I would start reading them by practicing one part at a time and putting them into your computer and doing that. Now, somebody said Danny Elfman was born with a musical gift. It cannot be taught. Baloney. Sorry, Gene. That's just baloney. Is it Gene? Yeah, Gene. Baloney. Danny Elfman started out like everybody, where he didn't know how to play any instrument. Okay? Now, certain people are really good improvisers, but pretty much everybody learns how to do stuff from experimenting. I don't care who you are. You can have teachers. They can teach you things. They can't... there are some people that cannot be taught. Somebody says that. That's actually absolutely true. But having a background and being taught is not... it's not a prerequisite having that. You can do these things just by having a great ear for melody, period. Danny is a friend of the family. It comes from being experimental. It takes imagination. All you have to do, there's a video out that I saw. It was done by maybe Vanity Fair or something. And it was from 2012. It's on YouTube. There's 12 film composers. And they go around the thing. They're all people that had big hit movies. Danny Elfman was one of them. And they asked everyone, what do you think every time you get a new movie? And every single person, these are all people done multiple, 50 films or more. They said the same thing. They sit there and they have incredible self-doubt about the ability to do what they're going to do. And they start out and these people write a few bars a day. And it's all about experimenting. So baloney, it's about a gift with this thing. Yeah, there are people that are gifted at certain things. There's people that are gifted technically that have more connections between their hands, in their fingers and things, and they can really technically play things without as much practice as other people. But pretty much anybody can get there if you practice enough. So you can teach yourself the music theory. You can teach yourself all that. You can learn the music theory for film scoring, for anything, for jazz improvisation on my channel. You can use it all. You can learn it all. So everything is practice and experimentation. Some people walk down the street and hum Rodgers and Hammerstein themes from their soul. Okay, all right, Gene. Beethoven, go look at his sketchbooks for his that he had. I mean, he has them for every piece. And he scratches out things and rewrites them over and over. John Williams will spend 6 weeks on a theme and come up with the Indiana Jones theme or the Superman theme. So baloney. You don't know what you're talking about on that. No offense. There are people that are gifted in improvisation. There's no question about it. Absolutely. No question about it. There are people that do have a gifted sense of melody that comes, but most of it is from them working at it and developing it. Certain people have taste that, can you be taught taste? I don't know. I have this term that I call aesthetic, usually say no offense first. Usually, so I have this thing called aesthetic aptitude. There are certain people that no matter how old they are, they know what's cool. There's a mixer that I talked about named Andy Wallace that I talked about with Sinister Gates that has mixed 5 of the Avenged Sevenfold records. And Andy's in his 70s. And they're one of the few bands that he works with now. But all through the 90s and the 2000s, he mixed everyone from Nirvana to Rage Against the Machine, to Linkin Park, to Jeff Buckley, to Sheryl Crow, you name it. And Andy Wallace was in his 60s then. But yet he did all these bands he did Faith No More, he did Slayer, he did Run DMC. I mean, everything. He's an old guy with a white beard, bald head, and people, when they would meet him, they'd hear Andy Wallace. I want Andy Wallace to mix my record. I know people that had their records mixed by him, and they would go in and they say, Andy Wallace looks like my grandfather. What? This is Andy Wallace? People couldn't believe it that he was this old guy. And he had the experience. He had the taste. And that is what I call aesthetic aptitude. People that have that are people that can't know what's cool no matter how old they are. And that is part of this. Being a great composer is knowing what is good. It's the same thing that you need to have to be a great producer. You have to be able to determine what kind of performances are really good. That's a really, really big part of producing. That's probably the biggest part of producing. This is good. That's not good. You're dragging, you're rushing. You got to play with more vibe. It's not intense enough. It's too intense. It doesn't fit with the vibe of the lyrics. So anyways, those are things that you need to have as a composer to be able to know what sounds good and know when you've come up with something good. But if you watch this interview I'm talking about with all these film composers, they all said the same thing, that they are riddled with self-doubt and they start every single piece, every film score the same way, where they're have incredible fear, and then they eventually come up with something. So, okay, so what else do you need to do? So you need to get a DAW, you need to get the software, you need to have plugins, right, for your effects, things like that. You need to learn how to write a melody, write a theme. You need to be able to create atmosphere, and knowing how to create atmosphere. Creating atmospheres, things like I'm doing here, like I said, where, so this is my, program, Rev, that I was talking about when we first started. Now, Rev instantly will give you atmosphere. There's many different ones. Change it to a different patch here. So we did that's the acoustic guitar. What else we got on there?
Try this.
Okay. So here you can hear it has a particular rhythm to it. So these are all backwards sounds. Go to their website and check out their demo of this because it has so many different sounds. So Rev is great. Omnisphere I don't have on my computer yet. I haven't loaded it on yet, but Omnisphere has amazingly great pads. If you want to have analog synth pads, analog string pads, all these weird sounds, there's probably 3,000 presets with Omnisphere. Omnisphere 2. So somebody said Omnisphere 2. What do you mean by backwards sounds? They're actually backwards. They're actually sounds that are reversed. That's why it's called Rev. A lot of times what you'll do is come up with a sound, some type of soundscape or something with reverb that has sharp attacks and reverse it. And that's how you get these things that sound like that. Because the envelopes are reversed, but they usually have things that have sharp attacks on them. Because if you reverse something that's sustaining, it doesn't sound. You don't hear that reverse. So you have to have something that has a definite attack with sustain and then reverse it. So always so the envelope be here and then kind of look like that, and then you reverse it so it's that way, right? So it kind of opens up to the it's like the envelope's opening. So that's why reverse sounds are really cool. And these are actually put in time, and they have gate. You can put a gate on it. You really get it in time, so that's cool. Let me talk about some of the effects that you can get. There's many reverbs out there. The UAD reverbs, the EMT plate, EMT 140, the Lexicon 224, the Lexicon 252, the Ocean Way. What's it called? Room modeler, I guess you call it. What do they call that? Ocean Way sound that Universal Audio has is fantastic, really great sounding. There's other reverbs that I've got. I have every reverb you can think of. Altiverb. I've got what's that reverb? Oh man. There's some real. Oh man, I'd have to look on my computer in the control room. Waves makes reverbs. Not a big fan of a lot of the Waves reverbs. As far as delays are concerned, I love Sound Toys. They make incredible. Valhalla. That's the one I was trying to think of. Thank you. Was that Alan? I couldn't see. Valhalla. The Relab LX480, that's the Lexicon 480L plugin of that incredibly great reverb. The Lexicon 480L is unbelievable. The real ones are incredibly good. So I'm talking about delays. Okay, so Sound Toys. If you want to get a great plugin set, Sound Toys is one of the absolute best. You cannot beat them. They have incredible delays. They have all different things, distortion things. They have a plugin. What's the plugin called? Chad Blake uses it all the time, along with SansAmp. They have a distortion plugin that's unbelievably cool. Somebody will tell me what it is here. Decapitator, thank you. Decapitator is amazing. I use that all the time. Decapitator can go on just a normal sound, plain sound. You take Decapitator on it, hit the crush button on there or distortion button, and you can sculpt and make an incredibly cool sound. It also has a lot of great stereo delays and stereo reverb sounds that you can use. So if I was going to buy another bundle, I would definitely think about Sound Toys. I think it's amazingly great. Okay, drum and percussion programming, very important for film scoring. There's many different things. There's a Hans Zimmer pack that Spitfire Audio makes that has his really kind of big drum sounds. East West makes some really cool plugins that have distortion on the drums. Storm Drum is the one. There you go. Thank you. Oh, somebody said Fab Filter. Fab Filter, I'm a huge fan of their plugins. They have a gate, they have a compressor, they have an EQ that are incredibly good. The Contact, I just touched upon Contact for a second. Contact, obviously, I use Contact all the time. They've got a great library in there of all different kinds of sounds. If you're in need of something really fast, before I'll reach for something with Spitfire, for example, when I did the tune Marigold by Periphery, I was like, okay, I need a string sound, and I immediately went to the string sound from Contact, even though I have all these string libraries. I don't know why, but I'm like, I need just a good generic string sound that has a quick attack, that has a staccato sound. And I grabbed that, and that's the one I used. So anyways, so the Contact player, I just assume everybody buys Contact anyways. If I had to actually just buy a few things, if I said, okay, I'm going to put together my film scoring rig, I have my DAW already, and I want to buy some plugins and software pieces. Okay, I'll go out on a limb here and I'll say what I would buy personally. I would buy the Spitfire Audio pack of whatever you can afford on there, but I would get strings, brass, and woodwinds. I would just start there. They've got some incredibly good sound libraries. I would buy the UAD pack. I would buy at least some of the plugins, but I would buy some type of UAD device. You're going to need some in and out, some converter to go into your computer. I have Pro Tools. I have 192 converters in there that I use. Somebody said Slate Digital. Now, Slate Digital has a lot of plugins. I have almost all the Slate Digital plugins. Now they're doing things where where you can pay for the things. You can buy them on a subscription. That will save you a lot of money. And it would actually be cool if Spitfire did that. But East West does it. But if I were going to get orchestral sounds, I would buy Spitfire Audio. Not a fan of the company, of the people there. I have to say, I've written to them a couple times. They're really slow at getting back to you with questions and things like that. Somebody just says, what about a really nice piano and miking it? Well, I've got a piano right over here, a few feet from me, and I mic it all the time. Vienna Library, Vienna Symphonic Library. I'm not a big fan of the Vienna sounds. I don't think they're aggressive enough sounding. I don't like the Miroslav Philharmonic one. I don't think that one is a great sounding one. I don't think it's that realistic sounding. And the Vienna sounds are very soft. And I just don't think that they're aggressive enough for what you'll need nowadays. I have cinematic strings. The Vienna. Somebody just said, Andrew just said this. Why the Vienna? It's because it's recorded. Yes. Because of where the Vienna strings are recorded, I don't think that they sound great. I don't think the room. I believe they're all recorded dry, and then you put on your own effects after. And I just don't think that they sound good. I think they're really soft, and you end up having to add a lot of EQ to them to make them sound usable at all. So I think that you need to record in great rooms, and Spitfire records in great rooms. Like I said, somebody says the Hans Zimmer piano. Hans Zimmer piano is an excellent sounding piano. There's some really good digital pianos. In a couple of my newest videos, I use the, what is it, the Gentleman? Is that the piano? The Gentleman upright piano. on my darkest scale ever. I use that piano because it's an extremely dark piano. But there's a lot of good there's some good digital pianos. I have a dictative piano that I use. It's really bright, and I use it because it's actually easy to hear things. I just as soon record a real piano. If you have a good sounding real piano, it's just as easy to do that. So Keyscape, there you go. If you're going to buy something like that, buy Keyscape. I don't know if they run sales on multiple packs of Spectrasonics. But speaking of that, I've got a one-day only sale of my Beato book and new mega PDF pack that has PDFs of 16 of my videos. It's 68 pages long, and I'm selling them together, or you can get the PDF bundle by itself. I'm doing a special discount for today. It's the Hurricane. Discount today because we're going to have the hurricane here in Georgia tomorrow. So that's why I wanted to get this thing out today. Okay, next thing, chord progressions. You got to know chord progressions. When you got to know basic chord progressions. Can I have a piano in there? Basic chord progressions. Okay, so what do I mean? Well, you got to know things like, you got to know basic diatonic progressions to start, because a lot of your songs that you're going to write, and even if you're, if you listen to Hans Zimmer, he writes a lot of really simple chord progressions and things. Okay, there's your standard 4-1-6-5 or 1-5-4-6 or 4-6-5-1 or 1-4-6-5. Those I always joke about that. It's any combination of those chords, right? That's probably the only one that they don't use, right? But you can go here, or you can go here. Pretty much any combination of those four chords is used on every song on the radio. Somebody says, "Let It Be." I always make the point that the Beatles were able to write 27 number one hits and only use 1, 4, 5, and 6 on one song, which was "Let It Be." But every other song that was a number one, if you go to their Beatles 27 Beatles number one songs on that record, only one song uses that chord progression. So they were able to write 27 number one songs that people still listen to today without resorting to that chord progression. But pretty much every pop song on the radio, whether it's an EDM song, whether it's a country song, you name it. Because people that work at record labels think that only songs with that progression sounds like a hit. Okay, so knowing basic chord progressions. Once you get past basic chord progressions, meaning diatonic chord progressions, and understanding them, if you know what a 2-5-1 is, you know what a 3-6-2-5-1 is, you know what a 1-4-5-1 is, you know a 4-1-6-5, just knowing the basic diatonic progressions, you need to know those. Next thing to do is you need to know your basic modulations and borrowed chords, okay? Now, I have videos on these things. Like, for example, I have a video called Chromatic Mediant Modulations. And that will give you, can I have a string sound here? That will give you sounds that have third relationships, okay? So let's say you're going from A major, right, to F major, to D major. That's your kind of third related modulations, okay? So you got A major. And then there's a common tone here between A major, F major, and D major. What is it? Because these chromatic mediant modulations are essentially common tone modulations, okay? the common tone is the note A. It's in all three chords. So go watch that video because that's really, really crucial. I have a lot of film scoring examples. John Williams, Thomas Newman, James Newton Howard, where Gustav Holst, where these things are used all the time, okay? These chromatic mediant modulations. You have to understand what parallel major and parallel minor is. Okay, somebody keeps asking me about a hexachord. We'll talk about hexachords after. Why don't I talk about hexachords? I have to have videos waiting to go. I haven't talked about everything in music yet. I will eventually. Don't worry about hexachords. Anyways, I didn't talk about gent for a long time, and people suggested that. And I've only seen one Do I Gent today. That's it. Have you seen any of these? Anyways, I gent, okay? Okay, so watch that video. Secondary diminished seventh and dominant seventh chords, okay? So also important along with these secondary, along with the chromatic mediant modulations or third related keys. I have videos on secondary dominance and secondary diminished seventh chords. I have a video on that. Watch that video. Bitonal and polytonal chords. Now, you're not going to use those that much, probably. That's getting into very sophisticated harmonic language. You don't need that. You can do film scores your whole life and never use things like that. But you're not going to be the top film scorer out there because guys like Thomas Newman and John Williams, they use these things all the time. I have videos on, somebody says suspended notes. Well, these are all part of, if you go back and watch my videos on using suspensions, I talk about using added note chords, meaning 4/3 chords, meaning sus4 with a third. So I've got like a D major triad here. It's not stopping. I got a MIDI note on there here. Anyways, so check out my videos where I talk about add 9 chords, where I talk about sus4 chords, where I talk about Lydian chords, where I talk about all different type of added notes, sus4/3 that I call, or major triad with an add 4. You got to understand all that stuff because these things are really important for your writing and will increase your vocabulary of things to write. You need to know how to write melodies in at least bass and treble clef. You can't just be good at film scoring by not knowing anything about music. You can do it, but it's very helpful if you speak the language of music, and the language of music is actually writing. That comes down to being able to read things. For example, I have this right here. This is John Williams' score of Star Wars, okay? Now, if you don't read music, this really doesn't mean anything to you. But if you do read music, this can be incredibly helpful to you. John Williams is one of the few people that can orchestrate his own pieces, although John Williams uses an orchestrator. And one of the reasons he uses an orchestrator, and always have, is that he doesn't have time to orchestrate it because it's really, really time-consuming to do that. So all movie composers, film composers, use orchestrators. John Williams happens to do things where he will do condensed scores with 8 staves, and he will write he'll take the first stave and he'll do, the woodwinds, for example. Or he might do, he'll do a stave with just the French horns, okay? It'll say 4 French horns or 6 French horns. And then he'll do the trombones on another stave and the trumpets on another stave. And he'll say, let's say he'll want something to start out with 2 trumpets, then go to 4 trumpets, okay? He'll actually put that in his orchestral sketch. I've got a video called How to Write an Orchestral Sketch. You guys should all go check out. Remind you that I'm having a sale on the my PDF bundle and the Beato book together for those of you that are interested, today only. But that's, my Beato book's 307 pages and this bundle is 68 pages. I'm doing I don't know what the price is, but go to my rickbeato.com and you'll find it there. Was it 63 or something, or $60? I can't remember. 63. There it is. Aaron just put it on there. Okay, so the next thing, or the last thing that I was talking about was reading scores and learning how to read scores. Why is that important? Well, reading scores are important to get ideas, but being able to do orchestral mock-ups is probably the most important thing. And I'll tell you why. Because many times, directors of films are just like record label people. And what I mean by that is that they don't have any imagination. You have to actually make a demo, okay, a mock-up that sounds so realistic that they can't imagine. It leaves no imagination. John Williams is one of the few guys that can go and do a piano thing and can say, okay, this is what it's going to be. And when he plays it for Steven Spielberg back in the day, Steven Spielberg had the imagination, knew that he was going to have it orchestrated amazingly well. It was going to sound great. But nowadays, directors don't know that. They need mock-ups. And typically, if you don't have the budget for your movie, a lot of times they will actually use the mock-up. Or they may use the mock-up of something, with fake instruments, and then they'll only... It depends on what the budget is. Sometimes they'll have the budget to record only a couple days with an orchestra. Or there's certain orchestras, you can go to Eastern Europe and you can record with an orchestra for very little money. So that's one of the things to know about, is that being able to do these mock-ups and make them sound incredibly realistic is very important. Somebody says you love the score for the movie Birdman. Now, Birdman was done by Antonio Sanchez, who's a drummer, and it's a really pretty much a drum soundtrack. But Antonio has been playing with Pat Metheny for years and years, probably, 12, 14 years, something like that, a long time. I just saw him play with Pat recently in Atlanta 6 months ago or so. But anyway, so these are things that you need to be able to do. That's my list of stuff to be able to understand. As far as the technical stuff about what type of theory to know, knowing modal theory, all this kind of stuff. I mean, I make these pieces and videos like The Darkest Scale Ever. These things are done. I write a piece as a demonstration piece, and you should be able to do these things. And this is how you should practice things. Limit yourself to one scale to practice writing in that way. Okay, this is a really, really good way to do that. But I've got many videos that you can go back through for the actual technique of doing these things. You can go back, watch all my scale videos, watch my scoring videos, watch my John Williams video, watch my Thomas Newman video, James Newton Howard, Bernard Herrmann video. I've got videos with all these different people. So, anyways, that's all I'm going to talk about for today. That's your toolkit for film scoring. Like I said, go check out my the Colors of Minor video. If there's one video where you can really hear these sounds, like what these sounds sound like, listen to the thing. I've got a video where it starts out with Dorian. It goes from the brightest minor mode to the darkest minor mode, even though it's subjective. Go check them out. The Beato book and PDF bundles are only going to be on sale for today. You guys are awesome. Tell your friends about the channel. Subscribe here if you haven't subscribed. I love it. I love it. Leave comments. And don't forget, I know there's a lot of you out there that never leave comments. Leave comments. It helps a lot. Give it a thumbs up. Give this a thumbs up when I hang up right now. Keep going. You guys are doing great. We'll see you soon.